Hello, it's the Security Weekly News wrap-up show on an unusual day because it's a holiday week. It's episode 170 of the Security Weekly News wrap. Can you believe we've done 170 of these? It's the week of 21 November 2021. Scams, exchange flaws, SquirrelWaffel, which I just like saying, Honeypots, and Hoodies, along with me ranting about lots of stuff because it's an off day. All this in the Security Weekly News wrap-up. Stick around.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week, your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. Every 11 seconds, there's a new ransomware attack. Oil pipelines, universities, corporations, all paying millions of dollars. Barracuda says, don't pay the ransom. Before a ransomware attack occurs, train your teams to recognize an attack and use anti-phishing technology. Protect your applications, and they can't get onto your network. Simple backup and restore solutions quickly recover your data without paying the ransom. Build your ransomware protection plan now by visiting securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda.
All right, I'm Doug White, and this is the Security Weekly News wrap-up show on an unusual day because of Thanksgiving. It seems like we were just here, and actually we were. It's one of those holiday things they keep talking about, right? So we were literally here like yesterday, yeah. On Application Security Weekly number 175, John and Mike had Liam Randall, the CEO at Cosmonic, on the show. They were talking about CNCF WASM Cloud. And, of course, when I see WASMs, MASMs, and all those good things, I know that that's assembly, and that always makes me happy. But WASM Cloud is a tool that helps developers build distributed microservices in WebAssembly, which is what WASM is. And they will run – one of the things about WebAssembly is that you can write code that will run just about anywhere. It'll run, it doesn't matter if it's on the cloud, if it's local, if it's on a browser. I mean, pretty much anywhere. And, of course, this particular product is about how do you do that securely? Because, again, if assembly has, problems, getting that, if it's chip-based or whatever, that can, and firmware, it can be a very big problem. And, I like assembly stuff, so definitely a program to watch if you're a fan of that or if you want to learn more about it. In the second segment, what would CVEs for CSPs look like? Clever C2 and malicious Python packages. I think they're trying to alliterate me into oblivion. Diversity and bounty programs, shared responsibility and secure default, breach cost to influence AppSec programs, and more. On Business Security Weekly number 241, Ben, Jason, and Matt had Kevin Powers, the strategic advisor for CyberSaint and an assistant professor at Boston College Law, and Padraic O'Reilly, the CPO and co-founder at CyberSaint, on the show. They were talking about something that I definitely think you probably should check out, how CISOs have to communicate to the board. One of the earliest jobs I ever had was trying to interpret engineering for Congress. So the ability to talk to congressional subcommittees about engineering behavior, because the engineers use lots of acronyms and so forth. And they want to talk about how effective ways that you could communicate your cybersecurity needs to those C-suite people. And it's a lot like CFOs and other specialists. They have to be able to translate the complex lingo of your trade into terms that the C-suite and board can understand. If you can't do that, you're not going to be very effective, and it's very important, and you'll lose funding and so forth. In the second segment, 4 things your CISO wants your board to know. 4 in 10 organizations do not employ a CISO, creating a culture of cybersecurity, and more. So we did not have Enterprise Security Weekly this week. They were off for the holiday. On Security and Compliance Weekly, number 95, Flea, Jeff, Kat Valentine, and Tyler Robinson had on Evan Schumann, a cybersecurity writer at McKinsey, kind of a famous cybersecurity writer. Evan was the founder of the Storefront Backtalk column, which was a PKI thing that was going on a long time ago, and it was all about retail and tech issues and so forth. Very early writing in that area. The segment that they did was about all the issues facing the connected world from the past, the present, and the future. So an interesting segment to check out. On Security Weekly News number 169, Byron Hundley guested to talk about intelligence, and particularly intelligence in the retail and hospitality sector. Byron's from the R&H ISEC, so interesting sector to check out if you're interested in how to get started on intelligence collection in your realm, whatever that may be. Did not have Paul's Security Weekly tonight, so skipped over that one as well. I should have deleted some of that stuff there. I should have deleted a whole bunch of stuff, but I didn't delete it. Oh no! But it's going to go by really slow. We're going to have to wait while I scroll past what Security Weekly last week was about because it was still in the text. I neglected to take that out. I thought I deleted it, but and then I can stall while we do that. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm going to talk about that. But anyway, Paul was on vacation, and as was the whole crew, so there's no show tonight. It's always weird when there's not a Paul Security Weekly on, but, that's the way it goes. In other news, the Security Weekly Unlock conference went virtual. So if you're planning on that, it will now be a single-day virtual event on the 16th of December. Thanks to Sam, who did all the legwork to put that thing together in person. And damn the pandemic anyway for not ending so we can get back to going to cons and having a good time. I keep expecting Orlando and Vegas to look like sets from Mad Max when we return one day. I really think we'll all have to get special. The next time we have like an in-person DEF CON that's not restricted, we need to get special costumes or something. I mean, I'm thinking of like a leather thong sort of thing with like a skull cod piece for me, unless Larry already made one because he probably did. And Aaron's probably going to wear a tutu or something and still be the scariest person in the wasteland. But outside of the threat of Aaron in a tutu, my threat for this week is going to be the continual evolution of scamming. I've always enjoyed scams. I mean, you probably know that about me. I always enjoyed it. Back when I was an undergraduate in school, I took a class in the business school that was about scams. And it was really interesting. And it made me realize how long this stuff had been going on. I mean, I think most people are basically good. And because they're basically good, they assume the best. I mean, I know there's always cynics like me and paranoids and people like that. But basically, most people assume that people mean well. And so the term confidence man, which is where this original thing came from, is about confidence. So the person has to give you confidence that they mean well. I mean, that's how you sell it, right? You appear to be a good person who's trying to help. Like the movie Paper Moon. In the movie Paper Moon, it's an old movie. Ryan O'Neal and Tatum O'Neal are in this movie when she was like 3 years old or something, and they basically pose as a person. He comes to town, he gets the obituaries, he looks up people that have recently died, and then they take this thing and tell these people that they had ordered a very special Bible, and he gets them to pay him for the Bible. And of course, they never get this, at all. It's just a ripoff. But all of that is the basis for social engineering. I mean, if you have a clipboard and a cap that says Con Ed, everybody just assumes the best and that you're really looking for that gas leak in the server room or whatever, and you're trying to help. So this particular week, like no other week in the year, is a huge opportunity for scammers. There have been a lot of articles and news stories about this. Along with all the discounts and bargains and sales and all this stuff, there are probably at least that many ripoffs, ransomware, and renegade software that's out there. And it's really easy to install that stuff on people's desktops if the user will do it for you, right? I mean, we know that. Well, Black Friday is a term that is used for the day after Thanksgiving in the United States. And there's a tradition that retailers have these massive sales on Friday. And we're just doing this for our friends from other countries who don't know about this, although probably most everybody does now. In the e-world, then, a lot of people want to stand on virtual sidewalks, I guess, and hit that refresh key all night in hopes of scoring that 90% off television or an electric plumbus cleaner that's going to maybe be available at Mr. Wiggly's Emporium for one day only. I never really got into it because I hate standing in queues, and I don't really like standing in sweaty crowds, and I'm not very thrifty. And, now my bank account would say I should be thrifty, but, if you look at it, you'll go, yeah, he's not very thrifty. So I guess I'm fortunate to be immune to this, seeking the sale kind of thing. But if anybody does want to pick up a PS5 or a Laney amp or maybe a 3090 video card while you're down there scratching and biting in the sales pit, feel free. I would really appreciate it. The scammers, however, do know that everyone is frantically seeking that next big deal, and they cannot wait to click the link of the fish or the smish or whatever. Like just today, I got 2 smishings and a couple of fishings that were all associated with Black Friday. I've got several promising the biggest sale of all time. I can't tell the real ones from the fake ones, so I get ones from companies I know. And, if you look, you can check the links and all this kind of stuff. But even then, it's kind of scary, right? Because it says 50% off of this or whatever. Get a PS5 for 50% off. So in the end, I just end up ignoring them all. I mean, I maybe could get a PS5 and 128-inch 4D television. So real that even time itself is fully visible. So I could watch old Doctor Who reruns and with 4D, you can see it all live as it's happening. But the threat is certainly real. And not the overt attacks that worry me. It's the subtle ones. All the ones where they compromise Mr. Squishy at gmail.com, which just also happens to be the login at the nuclear plant sign. Yeah, with a nice little phishing attack. They promise you can get a Tesla X for 99% off, and Elon Musk is going to deliver it personally if you just click here now. Or it's going to self-drive itself over to you and wherever you want. Like it'll meet you there. It's really tough to stop these attacks. I mean, we know this, right? I mean, this type of attack's been going on since the dawn of the internet and a long time before that in other forms. And it's probably going to continue until the next iteration of the human race. So I would guess this year's no different. Give them the hook and reel them in. I mean, so in the end, you need to warn and be diligent yourself, but you definitely need to ensure that all your people are up on how dramatic this stuff is and how it is a continuous evolution of manipulation, and it's not going to stop. I mean, I did a story yesterday. This guy in Nigeria, he had a new one. He got the employees in on it. He said, "Hey, are you disgruntled? Put this malware on your company system, and I'll give you a cut of the ransom." So he got arrested, of course, for running the ransomware scan, and he didn't just use phishing, but he just laid the cards on the table and said, "Hey, look, install this. I'll cut you in on the whole deal." Wow, I mean, it's creative, right? Evolutionary. Those free Davidoff cigars are yours if you'll just click here. Every time your credentials get stolen, it's another round loaded into the spear phishing cannon, and this one may be the one that works. I mean, they haven't gotten me yet, but it's not for lack of trying. And twice, my trembling finger was reaching for that left click button and stopped just before I clicked and thought, why the hell would anyone actually ask me that? And I, it was an awfully good ask. One was about my daughter's school. I had another one that was about like a test result or something, from my school. One was about they were going to cut my pay. And I was like, what the hell? And then I went, wait. They would never announce this way. But one day, someone will get the right bait, and we will all fall victim to this stuff. So at the same time that you're warning everybody about all these scams and everything else around Black Friday and Cyber Monday and Giving Tuesday and Regret Wednesday and all this other stuff, ensure that your backups and your response plans are tested and ready to go, because we will all eventually get got. And the ones that survive getting got are the ones that have a plan, and they test their plan, and they have a response ready to fire off that actually works. It's too late to make a checklist after the wings fall off. Anyway, I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving with that little cheery news. And if you are in the U.S., and if you're not in the U.S., well, happy Thursday and Friday as usual. And now the news. CVE 42321 was a zero-day flaw in Exchange server that was not, I guess, widely known, but it was one of those Exchange bugs for Exchange 2016 and 2019 that allowed remote code execution if the situation was right. It was patched, so it became known when it was patched on Patch Tuesday for November. So now this one does require that an authenticated user be there in order to run the code with escalated privilege. But, remember the Nigerian guy, so that, and remember the call is coming from inside the house routine. Incidentally, I was going to ask you, viewers, does anybody know of a movie earlier than 1974 which used the calls coming from inside the house trope? The one I always refer to as Black Christmas, which was in 1974, and that was the first time I'm aware of that particular trope. And I know that When a Stranger Calls was won a lot of people credit with that, but that was 1979. So if you know of one earlier than that, correct me. But anyway, regardless, it does mean that your regular users in your network could execute code, and can you say the phishing is coming from inside the network? Because, guess what? Phishing works. But I mean, it usually is, the nature of that. So the point of the story, and yes, there's a point, even though I'm sort of rambling, is that now that the exploit has been changed from 0 day to 1 day, essentially, it is very likely going to be exploited. And Microsoft has marked it as being exploited. So you definitely need to patch your Exchange server if you did not allow the automatic patch, which you probably don't on an Exchange server, to work. Security researcher Testanul published a proof of concept for this exploit, and they put that on the Microsoft GitHub site. So there's a link in the article to that if you want to read up on it. The article doesn't explain very much about how the exploit works, but there is a link to Testanul's tools, and apparently Testanul is still developing other, he called gray hat tools that allows you to develop exploits for this particular thing that he's going to put out there. So that said, you probably should be patching like right now while you're listening to this if you haven't already. If you're on your way home or you're traveling, you may want to turn around and go back, because guess what? Just in time for the holidays. And as long as we're bashing Exchange, well, there is a thing called SquirrelWaffle. And yeah, I love the hacking community. If this was a government thing, it would be called like the XB1057, but we called it the SquirrelWaffle. And this is the name of an offensive campaign, which may well consist, it's numerous piece of malware, really, that has now sort of become eponymous with what they call SquirrelWaffle attacks. And this was first identified back in September. Cisco Talos identified this campaign as a component, and listen, I love all these names, of QuackBot, which we know about, and Cobalt Strike, which just sounds more military, but Cobalt Strike and QuackBot being delivered in booby-trapped Office documents. So the QuackBot tools infect you with SquirrelWaffle, which is a DLL. Doctor, I think I may have SquirrelWaffle. Well, son, I told you what would happen if you kept looking at all those Alt 2600 magazines. You're lucky you didn't go blind fooling around with that stuff. But now the reality of SquirrelWaffle is that it isn't as sexy as it sounds. I mean, basically, it's just a reference to a tactic where a stolen email thread, so this is a way to make emails look legitimate, which encourages people to click, of course, and then it affects you with something like Emotet or some other kind of tool. So basically, it's a gateway STD or whatever you call that. So now you have QuackBot, Cobalt Strike, SquirrelWaffle, and Emotet all at the same time. And let me tell you something. Amoxicillin does not work on that. You are going to die soon if you have all those things. I did add a link for SquirrelWaffle, which has a full explanation of how the dropper actually works. So they deconstructed the DLL, the 32-bit DLL, so that you can actually see exactly what it's doing if you're interested in droppers and such like that, like I am. And it does have a full analysis of it and how it actually comes together. Anyway, the whole thing is a kind of cool examination of SquirrelWaffle and how it exploits Exchange server. But anyway, basically, SquirrelWaffle relies on proxy logon and proxy shell vulnerabilities, which have been around for a while now, but people still haven't patched them. And the point of this story was that you need to be patching these flaws in these types of servers. And if you haven't, they are going to exploit you with it. But patching Exchange is difficult. On a live email server, it's even more difficult, and it may end up with a lot of people yelling at you because their emails shut down and had to be rebooted. But maybe tomorrow, at least in the U.S., is a good day to get stuff like that done. I mean, I know. For me, it's an excuse to get out of those family dinners and such, so I've already had to call and say, I'm so sorry, I was planning to attend, but unfortunately, there's SquirrelWaffle, and if it doesn't get fixed, we're all doomed. This story was a little bit older, but it makes an awfully good point. As long as we're talking about buying things, the Internet of Things is all about adding complexity to your life in the form of convenience and tools you didn't know you needed and probably really don't need, but damn it, you want them anyway because they just sound cool. I mean, if we didn't do new things, I would be typing all this up while, by whale oil lamp or burning blubber in a bucket or something, or I don't know, whatever the hell they used to do for light around here. Because Rhode Island was a whaling site. So anyway, IoT is here. It has been here, and marketing is going to make sure that it's here to stay. Because why light with a single color whale oil lamp when you can have 65,536 different color whale oil lamps or bulbs? I mean, I just can't stand to see myself without proper lighting these days. My house looks like a Hollywood set. I'm having to put truss work up on the ceiling so I can hang all my lighting. But anyway, the story itself is about how so many of these IoT products have so many exploits and potential exploits, or even if they're not real exploits, they're just the ability to exploit the way it was set up. For instance, almost everything you buy has Wi-Fi on it now. I mean, even when I don't really know why it needs Wi-Fi. So I bought a new house a month ago, and it has Wi-Fi in damn near everything. I mean, the dishwasher has Wi-Fi, and you can control it remotely. Now, I'm not exactly sure what you would do with it. You know, it doesn't load itself or unload itself. So I guess if I loaded it up before I left the house, I could start it from my car, and or I can sit in my office and see if my glasses are clean yet. But there's little control on these devices, and they're hard to work with for the most part. And the article is about how things like unique identifier set codes were not correct on some gadgets. And when they were set up to people using they had set up a camera with the little QR code, like I was setting up that dishwasher, and I just scan this QR code, and you can suddenly take over the dishwasher. Well, people were using this camera. They realized after they set up, they could actually see somebody else's house because it did not have a unique QR code. And and of course cameras have been particularly targeted, right? Because if people put cameras in their bedrooms and cameras in their bathrooms and cameras in their kids' rooms, and suddenly that's not very good. But a particular example of this is something you really don't need is following luggage. And I didn't even know what that meant, but I do like having luggage on wheels, because when I'm running and I'm trying to make my connection, and even more fun with an N95 mask on. And I got news for you. I do like wearing a mask when trying to jog through a sea of sweating, heaving, crusty, scabrous humans from all over the planet who are all sneezing, oozing, and dripping everywhere. Really, I mean, I think we should have been wearing masks all along on planes. The first time I was on a plane, we wore masks. I was like, this is a good idea, because that guy next to me is like wheezing. But anyway, this luggage is called the Airwheel SR5, and it allows you to put on a wristband that uses Bluetooth, and then it follows you through the airport like an R2 unit. I mean, reputedly, it can avoid obstacles and such, but the article goes on and talks about how it doesn't do that very well. But apparently, it steered about as well as R2 units did, which I always thought was, like, how is that thing driving across sand? But, whatever. Researchers found that if you could guess the secret PIN for the suitcase, and they first tried the number 784-82273, because guess what that spells on a keypad? Suitcase, which kind of shows their age. But the actual PIN was 11111111. So basically, someone could steal your suitcase by driving it away from you, if they knew the PIN. So they could push the PIN in there and then take over the suitcase with their phone, and I guess you'd be running through the airport, and the suitcase is lagging along behind you, running over people, and then all of a sudden, you look back and go, hey, suitcase, where are you? And it's gone. So anyway, a couple of points about IoT here. When you add a lot of IoT devices, and you will, because damn it, 65,536 colors and a suitcase that follows you to hell and back is definitely something you're going to want. But be sure to set up and configure these devices correctly so that they can't be configured by someone else. So change those passwords, change those pins so that somebody can't just guess that, because somebody will. In your home, put your IoT devices in a separate Wi-Fi network to keep them away from other things in your home, and in particular to keep other people from accessing anything other than your stove, your dishwasher, your car, your boat, your luggage, your sex toys, your laundry. All that stuff is Wi-Fi enabled now. I mean, really. I mean, no kidding. Do some quick Googles on the device you just got and see if there's known problems with it, like hard-coded passwords and such. And if there are, you may want to try to isolate those devices, like even up until the point where you go in and disable the Wi-Fi. I went and disabled the Wi-Fi on some of this stuff because it was like, I don't really care that my dryer is Wi-Fi enabled, and I just turned it off. But think about it. Do you really need it? And if you do need it, fine. But think about how it can be hacked and what kind of damage it could do if it did get hacked. And, you kids get off of my virtual lawn before I have to send the bots after you. Yeah. Now, I love Honeypots, really, and I used to set up those Honeybee machines and connect them, build scripts that took people on wild little hopeful rides, what they thought was going to be the root control of a secret government server or something, just before dashing all their hopes and dreams to pieces with the big reveal that they were being used in a research project. Ha, 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 ha. And thanks for playing. Anyway, Unit 42, which is Palo Alto Research, set up a 320-node honeypot infrastructure, which was deployed globally. They were trying to see just how fast some of these things would be exploited if they were misconfigured. The protocols they used were RDP, SSH, SMB, and Postgre. And the devices had misconfigurations, obviously, in those services that were typical of common cloud misconfiguration. And within 24 hours, 80% of the 320 nodes were compromised. The important point here is that the attackers are now an infinite series. That's which is my term for things that where the equation has one of those infinity symbols on one side. You know the old, if an infinite number of hackers hacked an infinite number of nodes, they would eventually produce the works of Shakespeare and MASM assembly for Motorola 68,000 chips. But the infinite series is real in this case. The whole world is scanning and showboning and all this constantly. So you put up a new IP and it will literally be scanned in seconds. Try it and see if you don't believe me. Put up a new IP running Telnet where the password is password and it will be hacked shortly. I promise. Try it. Just don't attach it to anything. But the article basically making that point. The problem is your process is not infinite. So the equation is very unbalanced. On your side of the equation, it may take days or months or weeks or even longer to assess all your configs and vulnerabilities. Like, you know, that secure configuration policy requirement that you have that says will be tested quarterly, which may or may not have happened this year. Well, the internet does more than test you quarterly. It tests you infinitely and constantly for any known flaw. So most of those things they tested were easy fixes when you did the cloud setup. But despite that, the number of reported incidents we see where somebody set the permissions to 777 for the website because it didn't work otherwise is really out there. Fun article, though, so check that one out. And since I'm mostly just doing rants anyway today, I picked this story as well. This story led with a quote from 2016, the presidential debate. It could be Russia. It could be China. It could be a lot of people. It could be somebody that sits on their bed that weighs 400 pounds. We won't get into who said it. No politics. But the whole thing now has a name. It's called the basement hacker concept. It's been around forever. You know the idea that scientists and weaklings weighing 98 pounds who get sand in their face when kicked to the ground, and hackers are nerds with hoodies and no lives sitting in dark rooms eating Twinkies and drinking Red Bull, which just sounds truly horrid to me. But, or gin. No, gin's okay. But this stuff's been going on since I worked at the bank back in the 80s, and I got told, now come on, Doug, how many people could do this? You and a couple of other really weird nerds, ha, 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 all the finance bro types. But this stereotyping allows the enterprise to get the idea that they don't really have to worry because, nerds. Nerds are in their basements sweating and wearing hoodies. They're never going to be brave enough to take on the football department's web server. No way, they wouldn't dare. Those geeks mess with us and we will, I don't know, football, yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, a quote in the article of a social media post by a brand manager of a cyber training company says, why do you need a certification or degree to work in cybersecurity? The people who are exploiting your networks and applications don't have certification and degrees. Like, really? They don't? I bet some of them do. And you may not need a certification or a degree. But that doesn't mean everybody's stupid either. So, they always think programmers are all damaged. They don't have social skills and so forth. And maybe, there's a little bit of truth to that, as I say, sitting in a darkened room with no windows. But I digress. The point is, don't let stereotypes be used by your upper management as an excuse to dismiss security threats. I mean, not all football players are dumb, and but they may get dismissed for it, and then you may suffer for that as well. But basically, this whole hoodie thing really gets annoying, and the idea that hackers are all some shady losers sitting in their parents' basement is really naive. I mean, you and I both know that these threats range from, say, the Red Army to the St. Aloysius Girls School Choir and the programming club down to, the 12-year-old kid in the basement with the Red Bull and a hoodie who taught herself assembly and can outcode Grace Hopper. The answer is the threat's real. Don't allow upper management to dismiss these threats just because the clown music starts playing when they hear the term hacker and they think of bumbling nerds fumbling for their broken glasses in the dark while Shaggy and Scooby are smoking a bowl in the old Mystery Machine. Anyway, I think that's enough. It's a holiday here in the U.S. tomorrow. Well, it's sort of a holiday today, but not. A lot of companies go home at 12 or 2 unless you work for the old slave drivers here at Security Weekly, where they open the hatch and throw in some fish heads at 1700 on Thanksgiving Day. Although in reality, they are just great. Thanks, Sam and John and Gus and all the viewers and listeners who tune in. I hope you have a happy holiday tomorrow if you're in the U.S. And if you're in some other country listening, well, you'll have to work. So get back to it, suckers.